Some people, when they have a big win, the answer of what are they going to do next, where are they going to go, they say they're going to Disney World. For me, once we were done with our victory speech on Tuesday night, I said, we're heading to Buffalo. Got on the plane right away to come out here. We got to the hotel around 2 o'clock in the morning. I've been in Buffalo the entire time. And this has been an important place. Erie County, the entire region. I believe that for too long, the state legislators have not had the seat at the table that they should. That there are men and women who stand up to serve in Albany, and they come with that fighting spirit on behalf of constituents of Western New York, and unfortunately, they just haven't had the seat at the table they should. And when they don't have the seat at the table, that means their constituents don't have the seat at the table. I've lost count how many dozens of times I've been through Buffalo since entering this race April 8th of 2021. And that's why I've been here since the victory speech Tuesday night, and that's why we're going to keep coming back over and over and over again. The top two issues of this campaign, crime and public safety, and the economy. No matter how hard Kathy Hochul tries to talk about issues other than those two, the reality is those are the top two issues of this campaign. Now, I'm saying that because New Yorkers are telling us that these are the top two issues to them. It's not Lee Zeldin deciding what the top two issues are. That's not how this works. It's not about Kathy Hochul deciding what the top two issues are of this campaign. That's not how this works. New Yorkers are hitting their breaking point right now. We lead the entire country in population loss. Ask them, why are they leaving? Ask New Yorkers still here who are upset about those in their family, friends, and neighbors who have gone. Why did they go? If you ask people who are thinking about fleeing themselves, people who, by the way, every single day tell me, if you don't win this race, I'm leaving. Ask them, what are your top two issues? They'll say crime and public safety and the economy. So therefore, if that's what New Yorkers are telling me are the top two issues to them, I'm going to be spending as much time as I possibly can focused on solutions to those issues so that they can stay here. And that's the job of the governor of the state of New York. I believe that there's a lot that we could be doing to secure our streets. As the chairman mentioned, the implementation of cashless bail has been a disaster. I support repealing it. I believe that judges should have discretion to weigh dangerousness and flight risk and past criminal record and seriousness of the offense on far more offenses. As the chairman pointed out, the implementation of the HALT Act has resulted in our correctional officers being assaulted. I was speaking to just one person about one of New York's prisons that in the first 3 weeks of April, that they had 28 correctional officers put out of work due to an attack. We hear from law enforcement the implementation of the discovery law changes and how it's making it harder for them to be able to do their job. We see as Governor Hochul signed less is more last summer and released 191 people from Rikers Island as she did it, within days, within the first couple of weeks, you had a whole bunch of people immediately go back out and reoffend. We see raw, violent hate from a Tops supermarket in Buffalo to the streets of New York City, where members of the Asian American community have had one of their own pushed in front of an oncoming subway car, stabbed to death in their apartment in Lower Manhattan, beaten to death with hammers. I've heard it out of Brooklyn, where the Jewish community talks to me about how they have seen multiple attacks, often in the same week, where members in their community are assaulted for being Jewish. I hear it from the Sikh community, where their own members of their community are targeted with raw, violent hate. This state needs to be doing far more to back our men and women in blue. We should pass a law enforcement bill of rights. We need to overhaul the parole board and change it from a majority vote to a unanimous vote. We need to provide for a more input of victims' families, especially when you're deciding whether or not to release that cop killer or that murderer or that rapist. You need to be thinking about victim impact and victims' rights. As far as our economy goes, people are struggling as we're about to go through a July 4th weekend where they're experiencing higher prices to travel, higher prices for the food and other products for that party. The impacts of inflation and rising energy costs, the impact of high taxes and the high cost of living is directly contributing to that decision being made by New Yorkers to flee New York for good. We must bring spending under control in Albany. Tens of billions of dollars have increased over the course of these last few years. And if you keep Kathy Hochul and one-party Democrat rule, there's an absolute certainty that the lid that has been blown off on spending will only continue to massively increase. It is a certainty. I ask you, can we afford that? People who are struggling to pay their taxes, people who feel like their money would go further in another state, even if they can afford to pay their taxes in New York. They're deciding to leave because their income tax rate to New York will become 0. And by the way, they could go to another state where their income tax rate could be 0 there. We have to make the math work and cut taxes across the board. We need to enact the largest tax cut in the history of New York. We also have to tap into our own resources to safely extract natural gas in the southern tier and some other counties that are asking for this. They want to do it. Now, all New York will benefit from it, from the added jobs and the generated revenue, the lower energy costs, the revitalized communities. The communities in the southern tier look across the border into Pennsylvania, where they're extracting these natural resources, the same resource of the same shales. And by the way, none of what was threatened up in Albany to get the ban enacted is actually happening elsewhere. They're laughing at us. Now, for those up in Albany, not only do they not want to be able to tap into a resource and approve new pipelines that should be getting approved, they want to go further in their agenda that would make life in New York more unaffordable. They want to enact a statewide ban on all gas hookups statewide. And they're wrong for doing it. So I'm going to spend the next 4 months between now and November 8th focused on the issues that New Yorkers tell me are most important to them. When a parent talks to me about their son and daughter's education, when I go to visit the community around Top Supermarket in Buffalo and I hear about the poor performance of the public school and how the students who are there are not achieving the educational outcomes that they deserve and that they need to be hit, that because of a teachers' union, we are denying school choice to those kids. We need to fight for them. They don't even get a vote. Educational savings accounts, tax credits for school choice, lifting the cap on charter schools. I believe that all students deserve access to a quality education. We'll focus on other issues that are important to New Yorkers. But my message to Kathy Hochul is no matter how hard she runs away from this, no matter how badly it pulls for her, no matter how badly her lack of solutions are on these issues that matter most to New Yorkers, she will not run away from this debate. She will not be able to run away from accountability. And for the future of our state, she shouldn't be able to. I believe that she's in over her head. I believe that she's a walking identity crisis. You see it with the way that she evolves on this and she evolves on that, and she evolves on this and she evolves on that. That's her word. She's evolved. The fact is, she's trying to be a different person than the person you all have known her to always be, because she wants to win an election. I'm the same person I've always been. My feet are grounded. I believe that public service is about serving the public, not being served by the public. I believe that you provide people information. They make their own decision as to what's best for them and their families. Kathy Hochul is calling on New Yorkers to be her apostles. I look at New Yorkers as constituents, as residents, as New Yorkers, as voters. And I believe that New Yorkers want to be in control of their government, not be ruled by their government. So it actually doesn't even require a bill. It doesn't even require an executive order for what is the most important thing that we need a governor and lieutenant governor to do. That's to bring honor and integrity to the office, to bring transparency, to be here in front of the media when it matters most. When a budget is being finalized, you don't go into hiding, you answer the tough questions. And that you get to elect a governor and lieutenant governor on November 8, 2022, who's still there at the end of that 4-year term. And for New Yorkers who are used to what is now their third lieutenant governor in under a year, they deserve that. So we're going to bring that honor and integrity. We know what bills to pursue. We know what policies are important to New Yorkers. We know what to do starting on day one to have a historic, great first day in office. And we're committed to go all in on behalf of New Yorkers who are asking for us to focus all in on these issues, taking nothing for granted in all 62 counties of this state. But I'll tell you what, Buffalo, you've seen me a lot, many dozens of times since we got in this race. You will keep seeing me over and over and over and over again because it is my job all across Western New York, all across all the counties and all the regions of this state for everyone to have a voice and representation, to have a seat at the table, and for us to truly restore New York to glory. Thank you all for coming out. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Congressman, you've been silent on abortion since becoming the Republican nominee for governor. However, in the past, you've co-sponsored federal legislation banning abortions after 20 weeks. If you become the governor of our state, will you attempt to roll back existing abortion laws in our state?
First off, and actually I was here in this room for many interviews yesterday. I spent a lot of time yesterday answering a lot of questions from media, and this topic came up a lot yesterday. And among, by the way, many other topics, because I'll answer whatever questions media wants to ask me on anything. So I'm pro-life, but I found that people who consider themselves to be pro-choice agree with me when I talk about how New York should not have non-doctors performing abortion. When I talk about why it would be wrong to have late-term partial birth abortions, people who consider themselves to be pro-choice agree with me. I talk about why we should have more informed consent, that we should have parental consent. I believe that we should be doing more to promote adoption. These are positions of mine, policy positions of mine, that I have found people who consider themselves to be pro-choice, many of them agree with me. Now I feel like on this issue it's been too much division, where people talk past each other and not to each other, and that's really unproductive. I think it's our job, even on the most difficult topics, they might be the most controversial, that we try to find common ground however possible. To directly answer your question, those 5 specific policy proposals I just mentioned are ideas that I have, that I believe in, that I have found that people in New York who consider themselves to be pro-choice, many of them agree with me with.
Congressman, you already know that the Hochul campaign is trying to brand you as an extremist. And they are certain to come up with the fact that didn't you actually vote to decertify the 2020 election results and support Donald Trump? And people are going to say that's a law and order issue as well when it comes to our national government. How would you respond to that?
Well, there are 2 states that I objected to. And by the way, every January 6th, every single time a Republican has won the presidency over the course of many decades, on the same day, in the same place, as far as the same constitutional process, Democrats have debated their objections. January 6, 2021, the objections that I debated on the floor were related to non-state legislative actors changing the ways in which the election was administered. They did it in the name of COVID. Now there will be future natural disasters, there will be health emergencies, there will be more that will come up that will be surprises. I remember 2012, Superstorm Sandy hitting. It hit New Jersey hard. I remember it hit New York hard. And Governor Christie was asked a question about polling locations that were flooded. And he said, well, that's not my problem. You can go ask the politicians, they can deal with it. And I remember that one hit close to home for me, because access to those polling locations, it was an issue for us locally as well, where homes and businesses were flooded out. You can get surprises at the 11th hour. The United States Constitution says that state legislatures set how elections are administered. And there's no exception where all of a sudden you can have non-state legislative actors decide that they're going to have a whole nother way of how to administer that election. So in Pennsylvania, for example, and I won't bore you with all the details, but I have provided many different examples of what I had an issue with in 2020 related to non-state legislative actors setting the administration of the election without seeking approval. The Pennsylvania Secretary of State entered into a friendly lawsuit settlement with the League of Women Voters. If you think about how this plays out, in Albany, let's just say hypothetically that in January there was a Democratic legislature serving with a Republican governor. And it's fast forward to October 25th of 2023. And there's some type of a hurricane that hits New York. And I, with the power that I whereas heretofore grant upon myself, sign some type of an emergency power where I change how the election is administered however I want to change it. I'd be wrong to do so without seeking the state legislature's approval. That's what I stated on the floor of the House of Representatives that day. It's the same concern I have today, and regardless of whether you're talking about 2024, 2026, or 2028, going forward, and regardless of whether your candidate comes in first or second in any given election, what's very important is that we all agree now on what our understanding is of what the Constitution provides, because there will be emergencies again in the future. And when that happens, I don't want to see non-state legislative actors deciding that they're just going to change how an election is administered in the name of what we saw, the pandemic. I'll give you one last example. In Wisconsin, some county elections official gave voters in his county direction on how to get around the state's voter ID law and signature verification law. He didn't have the authority to do it, but he did it anyway. And there's so many other examples just like that. And I think that remains an important topic today. And it's an important topic as we look to the future and future elections.
I got to ask the follow-up though, obviously. What about January 6th? What's your opinion of what happened there?
Oh, as I weighed in, as it was happening, I was on the floor of the House of Representatives. I imagine you're asking about the people who entered the Capitol, right? I don't want to make a bad assumption. So I was on the floor of the House of Representatives when it happened. As soon as I found out exactly what was going on, because inside of the House chamber, at first we had limited information, I instantly put out public statements across social media platforms. I put out a statement to the media, which got picked up as well, that they needed to get out of the Capitol, that they were wrong for the violence that we saw, the looting that we saw. There were people who were getting hurt. That is not how this country should ever witness any day inside of the United States Capitol, where people are taking matters upon their own hands, they're breaking windows, they're stealing things, they're hurting others. All of that was absolutely wrong, and I've weighed in on that since the very first moment I first learned of it, and I was still in the Capitol when it happened.
At noon today, Governor Kathy Hochul, as you know, is convening a special legislative session to protect New York's existing concealed carry permit laws after the Supreme Court overturned them. What is your stance on New York's concealed carry, and also how do you feel about our red flag law?
New York's concealed carry law was unconstitutional. That's why the Supreme Court overturned it. And we have to view this issue where we understand that law-abiding citizens who want to safely and securely secure a firearm for their own self-defense is different than a criminal who doesn't care what the laws are. And with the system that we currently have, they're able to commit crime after crime after crime, and they still somehow end up back out on the streets to carry out more offenses with firearms and otherwise. So when the decision was made by the Supreme Court, and I had signed the amicus brief in support of the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association's case, I believe the Supreme Court made the correct decision on behalf of law-abiding New Yorkers. I have a problem with criminals who go out and commit crime after crime after crime with firearms and otherwise, and they hurt other people. And they're still out on the streets under the current system where they're committing additional crimes. So they convened this special session up in Albany, and Kathy Hochul, who was an A-rated, NRA-endorsed member of Congress here, until she wanted to run for governor of the state of New York, and she decided that she had to be someone other than who she's always been in order to get votes. Just like she made a name for herself advocating against driver's licenses for people who are not legally in the country, until it became politically expedient. You know, her pollster or whoever gave her advice that she needed to take the opposite position. Consistency is not Kathy Hochul's middle name. I believe that the legislature is making a wrong decision to enact legislation that targets law-abiding New Yorkers. They're not getting to the heart of the problem. I actually think that they're making New York less safe. They create a target for criminals. If you're going to identify a location and you're going to tell the criminal that at that location there will be no law-abiding New Yorkers who will be safely and securely carrying a firearm for their own self-defense, you are putting the safety of other people at that location at risk. So I actually think what they're doing in Albany will make New York less safe. You asked about red flag laws. I believe that the Buffalo shooter should have had access to no firearm at all. He threatened to shoot up a school. That's a felony. The fact that he was able to carry out the offense as he did is enraging because of the clear as day evidence that he presented to the government that he should not have access to any weapon at all to carry out an offense. As far as New York's red flag laws, there are three things in particular that I believe need to be strengthened in order to improve due process for law-abiding New Yorkers. If you're going to try to take away firearms of a New Yorker, that there should be a notice of a hearing that you should be able to attend or be otherwise represented in to be able to provide evidence to that judge. Right now, the process that's in place, you can remove firearms from someone and there is no due process rights where every New Yorker who's in that situation is going to be able to get that notice and to be able to present that case. The second thing that needs to change is that after that person has their firearms taken away without notice of that hearing, the burden is on the person who had their firearms taken away to not only appeal it, but to prove by clear and convincing evidence that they should get their firearms back. There's a very high burden that is set after that original decision was made without them being present at the hearing. And the third thing is there should be consequences for filing a false accusation against somebody else. The idea that you can just narc on your next door neighbor, that maybe you're having a fight over something that's unrelated and minuscule or minimal, and you decide to pick up the phone because you know that they have firearms, and you're able to successfully get their firearms removed by the government in a process that that person wasn't able to get notice of a hearing and be represented in that hearing, and then had this really high burden to be able to earn getting their firearms back. There's no consequences for that fake accusation. It's wrong.
Going back to abortion, if I could, in the past you've expressed interest in appointing a pro-life health commissioner. Considering that New Yorkers by 63% support abortion, the right to choose in our state, do you worry that this single issue will affect your chance at winning?
Well, what I had stated was that I think it would be great to have a health commissioner who respects life as opposed to what we've had. And as we've seen from Howard Zucker and in recent health commissioners with the deadly nursing home order and cover-up, I don't believe that the health commissioner has been respecting life in New York. And I still feel like there's a need for justice and accountability where life has been taken as a result of decisions made by the health commissioner. The third thing that I'll do on day one is I'll appoint a special prosecutor for that deadly nursing home order and cover-up. For any crimes that were committed for the families of these victims, they demand it and they're not going away. And I'm going to fight for them to make sure that they get justice. As far as qualities of who the next health commissioner is, I could think of 1,000 different things to look for. We want to, for every state agency, appoint the best qualified person based on experience, on leadership, on work ethic. We have to make sure that they are able to articulate the vision to lead the department, to make a department work more efficiently. I have many problems with the New York State Health Department, and I see the way that politics are so often playing into the process of being able to secure approvals, to be able to expand access to healthcare in New York. If you asked me what the top priorities are of what we're looking for in New York's next health commissioner, I would be able to tell you many different things. I will be asking that person, if you're the health commissioner, what are you gonna do? What's your vision? How would you be the greatest health commissioner in the history of New York State? Their answer to that question is the #1 qualification. It's the job that they're gonna perform as the health commissioner. I do think it would be great to have a health commissioner who respects life, and that would be a welcome change from having health commissioners, as we saw with Howard Zucker, who clearly, in my opinion, didn't respect life.
You
So
mentioned
what's the
state
legislative-
spending. If we could ask this one real quick, because this is important to everybody here. State spending, obviously, the governor committed over $600 million to the Buffalo Bills Stadium. A lot of downstate people weren't happy with that. What's your position on that?
I think that the process was horrible. This showed a lack of competency on the part of Governor Hochul. She should have negotiated a better deal for New Yorkers. I believe that this was something that popped up very late in the budget process. It was very irresponsible on her part. I believe that there should have been more of a public discourse. I think that the public deserves that. I believe that state legislators deserve that. I also think, as far as provisions go, that if the Buffalo Bill owners were, if the Buffalo Bills were just going to pick up and leave the state, horrible, can't ever happen. As far as what's on paper, if they left 3 years later or 4 years later, the value of what they would get for that sale would include this deal. Where's the return to the taxpayers? Where's the return to the taxpayers as far as tickets and concession sales? And I mean, this is a big investment from Erie County taxpayers. It's a big investment from New York taxpayers. I thought waiting until the 11th hour to do it, the lack of transparency, not staying in frequent contact with state legislative leaders, and the deal itself, the way that she didn't negotiate the best deal for New York, is something that I have a huge problem with.
Would you change that if you're elected? Could you do anything? I don't know.
Well, the first question is, what can you do? And ultimately, what is important is what's best for New York. We have loyal Bills fans who are excited about their team, especially when you're 5, 6, 7 games into the season. They seem to always start, 5-0, 5-2. Every year, you always start looking like you're going to make it. You're going to make it to the Super Bowl that year. The loyalty of the Bills fans to their team is something beyond any other team loyalty that you see of any sport anywhere else in this state. To any professional team, to any college team, there is a special connection between the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Bills fans. As far as this particular agreement contractually of what we can do to improve upon it, I would welcome any options that are available to do so, but keep in mind that they're moving forward in a contractual agreement right now that where decisions are being made and they're putting pen to paper.
Congressman, you mentioned all your visits to Buffalo, and I think if you go back in the records, you will see that anytime a Republican has won statewide, he usually carries Erie County. It's not going to be a tough assignment for you in an overwhelmingly Democratic county where your opponent is from.
Kathy Hochul will lose Erie County on November 8th, 2022. I will tell you that even though she's from here, I have found a whole lot of New York voters from Erie County who know Kathy Hochul the best are actually more upset with her than other New Yorkers who are just getting bad first impressions. New Yorkers are not happy with Kathy Hochul's performance as governor. They don't approve of her job performance. They don't like the way that she's pandering to tax and spend pro-criminal liberals in the state legislature. I've been to Hamburg many times just since she's become governor. My second trip to Hamburg, I was invited by a group of Democrats to the Hamburg Public Library. And it was very important to them that I came to the Hamburg Public Library. They made a point of telling me about how they've known Kathy Hochul since she was a little girl, and this was the library that she would go to when she was a kid. And they were really upset with her. And these were loyal Democrat voters who wanted her Republican opponent, who was in a four-way primary, to come then and to make sure that it was known to Kathy Hochul that they had me come. And there were a lot of people there. I've been to Hamburg many times. My trip after that, I was at the Hamburg Fairgrounds gun show, and they were talking about how Kathy Hochul used to spend hours there. And she would go booth to booth to booth. She would be looking at all of the different firearms, and she'd be bragging about her A rating from the NRA and her NRA endorsement. Not only was she not going to the Hamburg Fairgrounds gun show, but instead she was trying her best to compete with Kirsten Gillibrand for the fastest transition to Jane Fonda possible. I don't know, why they do that. I believe that it's important to be consistent. That is a very important trait of leadership that Kathy Hochul does not know anything about and she doesn't seem to care about. We're going to win Hamburg. And Hamburg has a big Democrat to Republican advantage. We have a strong base of support inside of Hamburg, and it's not just Republicans. We're not just talking about the Republican committee in Hamburg. I'm talking about Democrats in Hamburg who are loyal Democrats who have known Kathy Hochul since she was a little kid, who have made a point of telling me that they're going to do absolutely everything in their power to make sure that we win Hamburg. Now, on the flip side, if you go to Shirley, New York, if you go to the town of Brookhaven, I grew up in Shirley, New York, in the town of Brookhaven, in the county of Suffolk. Kathy Hochul is going to get crushed in Shirley, in Brookhaven, and in Suffolk. Not only will she not be invited there by Republicans who have known me best to the local public library that not only did I grow up in, but that was where I had my first job. But she will end up losing that area. Maybe she breaks 30%. And that's blue collar America. This is a low to low middle income community. No one is given success in life. I was raised, my parents were divorced and remarried, or all four of my parents were union members. My father became a small businessman, but he was a CSEA shop steward when I was born. No one was handed success in life in that community. And I went K through 12 in a school district where my daughters now go to school today. And the reason why I wanted to raise my daughters in that particular school district is because they will learn that important value in life, that success is earned. And you can't just expect to be hitting some lotto ticket in life. You need a strong work ethic and you need the right values. But something is very striking to me about the level of support that we have right now in Hamburg, and we're going to win Erie County.
Just a quick follow-up on that. Just to respond to that, she just got 85% or more of the Democratic primary here in Erie County. So are you saying there are a bunch of Democrats that didn't vote in the primary, they're going to come out in the general election and vote for you?
Yes, absolutely. There are a lot of Democrats in Erie County who are disenfranchised Democrats. They feel like the party has left them. They don't like seeing how you have these politicians from 4 counties of New York. Basically, Albany is controlled by Manhattan, Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens. And it's a very far left view of what the future of New York and America should look like. And every day, and by the way, every time I visit Erie County, I come across people who tell me they are Democrats and they're voting for me. In this great state, we have liberals, moderates, and conservatives. We have Republicans, Democrats, and others. The voter in Erie County is made up of registered Republicans and conservatives, who we're doing great with. Independents, who if the elections today, we would handily win. And then you have a group of Democrats who are not happy with the direction of the Democratic Party. In this state, we don't have to win the Democratic vote, but there absolutely are a lot of Democrats who will be voting for us, and they tell me firsthand every time I visit. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Do you have a figure in mind about how much it's going to cost to win this election? I mean, lots of times people throw around figures of $30 million to win a statewide election. Do you have any kind of goal like that in your fundraising?
Our total spend for this campaign will be at least 25 to 40 million, and that doesn't include independent expenditures.
So that's for the general?
Oh, for the whole campaign. We've been operating this campaign
Gotcha.
in that range of at least 25 to 40 the whole time. It shifts due to the different dynamics, one of which was the primary. We ended up spending money to get our message out in the primary, and almost all of our funds during the primary was spent on a message that was winning us votes for the general election. If you go back and you watch all of our TV ads, these were TV ads that were almost always Zeldin versus Hochul. So it gave us a solid head start on the general election. The primary election helped us to win the general. As we saw on primary night, I got a phone call from Andrew Giuliani and Rob Astorino, and they were telling me they wanted to do whatever they can to make sure that we win. This party has not been this united in a very, very long time. Statewide, everyone's feeling very good about Tuesday's results. We've seen a big fundraising boost just since the primary night. All sorts of people coming out of the woodwork wanting to host fundraisers and donate to the campaign, and that's fantastic. But I would say that if I was to sum up the range, right now it's at least 25 to 40.
Okay.
One more.
This is the last
the,
one.
the key demographic a lot of people are talking about, the suburban, moderate, college-educated woman that has vacillated sort of between Trump to Biden and seemed to be coming back to the Republican Party for this election. Are you worried at all that with abortion rights becoming a sort of centered issue that you might be losing that demographic?
The issues most important to New Yorkers: crime and public safety and the economy. And for that suburban voter who you described, who's thinking about the future of their family in New York, they're thinking about the security of their family, they're thinking about the cost of living here, the opportunity for their kids. They want to raise their kids, and then they would be able to start their families here. They're concerned about COVID mandates and the quality of education in our schools. It's not about what Lee Zeldin would want the top issues in September and October to be, and it's not about what Kathy Hochul would want the top issues in September and October to be. It's about what the voter is saying is their top issue. And if you ask them, what is your top issue, they're telling you that their top issues are crime and public safety and the economy. So I am going to focus on those issues because that's what New Yorkers are telling me are the most important issues for them. And the contrast with Kathy Hochul on these issues could not possibly be any starker. We have not seen rock bottom yet in the state, but we will see rock bottom if Kathy Hochul gets 4 more years in office.